Joining the show tonight, a D2 national champion, proud Bison. This man has a 100% completion percentage in national championship games. The commander of the Flexbone himself, Cole Keelan. What's up, dude?
What's up? How are you?
Dude, the introduction writes itself with you, man. Just like, whether it's the quirky offense or the run that you guys have had this last year, definitely someone I've wanted to get on the show, man. I'm glad to get you on here.
Sure, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, dude. Well, start it off just like this. 677 rushing yards, 661 passing this year. What does that make you?
I don't know. I mean, 15 games, typically your quarterback has more yards in both aspects, but I mean, in our offense, we spread around so much. I think we had over 13, 14 guys over 100 yards on the year, which is crazy in itself. So, I mean, I don't really look at the stats too much. I honestly try not to because I think when we played 11 games my freshman year, I think my stats were better. So, try not to really look into it.
I was hoping you were going to say, like, maybe like dual threat or something along those lines, and I was going to counter. I was going to say game manager.
I can't argue.
No, but a damn good one. And I love the hilarious talking points right now around that term and like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, there's not one person on this earth that could define that and whether it's a negative or positive thing. But what I do know is what you've done for this offense has certainly been a positive thing, and you're a big part of the success that you guys have had. And speaking of that success, 6,160 yards. What the hell goes through your mind when you hear that number? And just talk about the mindset of what it takes to achieve that as a team. Obviously, I know you guys didn't get in the locker room and say, hey, we're breaking that fucking record this year. I know that wasn't a conversation on day one, but you did it. Talk about what it took to get there, man, because that is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, last year we went 9-2, didn't make the playoffs, and had kind of an off year. And then we get back into 2023 season, and we start out, get a little hot. Like, we don't think anything about like records. We're like, oh, we need to make the playoffs. We need to make the playoffs. Then we get the 1 seed, and it's like, then we build these games. We have 630 rushing one game, 500 the next, 450. Get in the national semifinals, and we have, I think, four something, and it's like, well, you guys just broke the record, and then we had 500 more after mines. It's just like there's so much that goes into that. This offense is so detail oriented, and just like it's more than you'd ever expect detail wise, and like all 11 guys have to be almost perfect every play with all that we do.
Absolutely, dude. And one of the details from that offense, and people rip on or make jokes, myself included, about how much you guys do or do not throw the ball. When you did, it was pretty efficient, about 30 yards per play when you guys dished the rock out. What kind of correlation is that like in a practice setting? Obviously, they don't have you dropping back in practice because you don't do that on Saturdays. How often are you throwing in practice? And like, is it really that much of a difference from someone on the outside who might think that you guys just strap it up and go at each other for an hour and a half every day?
Oh yeah, we always joke around with the people we're playing against. Like, we were playing against Lenore Ryan in the semis, and they were like, "Man, I know y'all hate practice, but we don't hit, we don't touch each other in practice.
Okay.
Like, our
Yeah.
practices are like almost all on air. Like, we don't go live past fall camp, like nothing. So it's just like working on our craft, and then throwing. I mean, I probably throw two receivers probably throw 50 balls maybe every practice,
Yeah.
which I assume in the spread it's like 500. So, so I mean, we throw a little bit. And the thing about our passing offense, it's either there or it's not. Like, it's either a touchdown or it's an incompletion. So, I mean, you kind of have to be efficient when you do that.
Make you want to gamble after throwing a couple of those, dude. But we don't do that because
Absolutely.
NCAA student athletes and all that's not real. But talking about that offense, and I think it's very interesting. You guys brought in over 40 this National Signing Day, which is a large class in itself, especially when you bring back a good amount of talent. And when you bring those guys in, it's obvious like they don't show up to day one of camp or whatever. Although I do think it would be hilarious, by the way, if all the freshmen of college football teams didn't know the scheme that they were coming into. So you commit to a program, you show up on the first day, and you're sitting there, you're praying, and you're a wide receiver, and you're like, man, like, please, like, give me the spread, give me the spread, give me the spread. And they see the bone on the whiteboard the first day, and they're like, no! Like, no way. But that's not how it works. They know what they're getting themselves into. They're bought into that. But how much does it take, really, that word or that phrase bought in is thrown around a lot, for some of these younger guys to really embrace the culture and the style of play that you guys have? What kind of process is that like, and how quickly do they jump on the train?
Yeah, you'd actually be very, very surprised how many people get here week one of practice and they're like, "Wait, what offense do we run?"
No
Like
shit.
we
No
got dudes
way.
don't know what they're getting into. Yeah, I mean it's surprising how many. And then, uh, I mean, typically we don't report for summer, so we get all summers optional until fall
I
camp.
see. Okay.
So, so if you're on offense, especially, the chance of you redshirting is essentially 100%.
Okay.
So you get a whole year under your belt. And the thing is about that, like a lot of people either learn they're in the Flexbone, realize they don't like the Flexbone, and or realize they don't want a redshirt, and they like say 50% of each class dips. So it turns into like survival of the fittest. And after a year, like you're either bought in or you're not.
You see a lot of successful programs kind of follow that methodology, though, like weeding out some of those guys, especially when you have a quote unquote like unorthodox style that you guys have. But then you go back and talk about some of the other things that you already mentioned, the no contact during practice. And you think, the easiest correlation for me to make is NFL teams. How often are the freaking Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs, just random examples, like how often are they suiting up and going? Now, Lions might be a bad example with
Dan
MCDC
Campbell.
over there. Yeah, that might have been a bad example on my part, but per typical NFL team, the great teams and the high level teams at that are able to find this. Some guys call it like a 75, 85% where you're flying around, you're making plays, you're going through your scheme, your all your assignments, but you're not finishing. And I think there's a very weird balance. I think it goes back to that bringing in the classes and the underclassmen, redshirting and all that has to certainly help them get up to speed and kind of get with the tempo you guys have at practice.
Yeah, so a lot of our underclassmen red shirts, they spend whenever season gets like started, like actual game one, practice week and on, like our red shirts are typically like our fit team because we're not going against our defense, we're going against a fit team.
Of course.
And that also gets into a completely different thing because we don't know what defense people are going to run against us.
Yeah,
So we practice everything. Like there's been
that's a good point.
yeah, so like my freshman year, I remember we were playing Ouachita, and they were number like 5, we were like number 7, and we practiced specific tags, plays, everything for a specific 4-2 defense that they run, and they came out in what we call the Northwest Missouri defense, 4-3 deep Mike at about 8 yards, and completely. I mean, I was 18-year-old freshman. It completely threw me
That's
off. I was
something,
just,
dude. Because you've
I
got no
mean,
like they've obviously adapted because they don't play another offense that looks like that, and because of that, you don't have the film to base their reaction, and it's this game of cat and mouse that, in that situation, favors the defense because there's nothing on tape for you to prepare for, and that is interesting. But let's talk about talk about the conference play a little bit in the Great American, the GAC. Feels like a conference doesn't necessarily get the love that talking heads like myself will talk ad nauseum about the GLIAC and the MIAA and the Gulf South and those kind of things. The Great American Conference has had a lot of teams make the playoffs and make some runs. You guys obviously being at the forefront of that. What does the conference need to do, if anything, to be in the same conversation as some of those other ones?
man, I mean, I don't know. I just say like simple answer is probably not the best answer. I mean, perform in the playoffs. Like, there's been a lot of years where we've been one and done. There's a lot of years that OBU, Henderson have been one and done, and it's just like, I mean, then there's teams like Northwest Missouri, Grand Valley, Ferris that every year they're in, like they're a threat to win
Yeah,
it. So
absolutely.
I
And
mean,
that's, not to cut you off, that you're kind of just lead me into my next point, and that is, you knew we were going to talk about it, the gauntlet that is Super Region 3, the playoff bracket buster that is Division 2 and crushes hopes and nightmares of fans of the game across the country every year. That's a big stepping stone in that fact. And when you look at the Great American Conference, you have 4 teams with 9 wins this year in a conference that has a good amount of talent. So I certainly wouldn't argue that the depth is not really there, especially you talk about that top third of the conference with teams like Ouachita and you guys and Henderson and, squads like that. And the problem is you're going into these playoffs and you've already got the gauntlet off the rip. So it's a very interesting kind of dance that you play. But as far as your guys run this year, talk me through those 2 ridiculous games in the second and third rounds and how you managed to find a way to win in both those.
man, so I'd say Central Missouri has the best offense in the country by far.
Fair.
Like obviously excluding ourselves for the sake of the conversation.
Yes,
And
hey, yeah, that's a good step back there. The boys appreciated that one for sure. But the Harlan Hill voters would agree with that first assessment for sure.
and then I think Grand Valley had the best defense, excluding us in the
There you go.
country
There you
by
go.
far. So, I mean, going through the Central Missouri game, they went down, scored first drive, and we're like, whoa, like that never happens. And then we got the ball back, had a grinder about 10, I think it was like an 8-10 minute drive, go score, and then we realized it was gonna be a grind. And we in that game we had some things go wrong. We dropped a pick,
Hmm.
or not dropped a pick. We had a chance to get an interception, and that would have if we would have picked it off and scored, if we would have capitalized on a few drives on offense, that's a 28-point game. Like they were a great team, but I'm sure they missed out on opportunities, but we missed out on a lot of opportunities ourselves.
For sure.
So that one, and coming down to the block field goal, I mean, that was pretty awesome. I wouldn't change it at all.
That was
But
insane.
yeah, and then
Oh,
Grand Valley, I mean, we get out there first drive, first play, we run zone dive for about 8 yards, get a face mask on top of that. A few plays later, get a pass interference, and we're on the 25. We're like, oh, we're in business. And that's about as far as we got until the fourth quarter with about 3 minutes left.
yeah, that one was awesome. And like watching the end of that one, it's the classic case of the unstoppable object. That's you guys versus the or unstoppable force versus the immovable object being that Laker defense. And again, we've talked about a lot of those guys. Had Abe and Gilchrist and some of the other guys in the front seven on here a lot, but just like front to bottom, like it's top to bottom. Those guys come downhill. They play heavy at the line of scrimmage, and obviously we're ready for your scheme. But again, it's a big contribution for that offensive line unit and for you guys as an entire unit. The fourth quarter is when you start to wear down teams like that. Grand Valley's not a team that usually that happens to. So you guys just kick it into a next gear on that last drive. Was it just obviously backs against the wall? Had to be kind of the mentality there.
Yeah, I mean, like got the ball with about I think like 8 minutes to go in the fourth, and we knew like this was like it had to be it. And though talking about our O line, I mean they're phenomenal. Obviously, best O line in statistical history with the 6160
There you
that
go.
you mentioned. And like most of the interior D linemen that we play leave the game on crutches. So they're getting, I mean, cut, double teamed. Like they don't have an easy night. So yeah, wearing on them
That's tough.
for sure. And then getting into that last drive, I mean, like we obviously in the Flexbone we have a big like our big ideal is like doing it for the guy next to you. And I mean, shoot, you're talking about back against the wall. We're just talking about like do it for each other and like let's go get another game together. And
Yeah.
that's what we did.
Absolutely, man. You got, obviously the credit goes to the offensive line because that offense and any offense doesn't work if you can't move those bodies. But you talk about the talent in that backfield too, in the season that Dela Cruz goes and has, and guys like Spicer on the outside that become those daggers. And I feel like those kind of you hit the dive, maybe get outside, and then the counter, whatever kind of outside heavy hitters come, and that's just like sinking a dagger into any defense and just taking the air out of guys. But talking about your team specifically, you've been in the upper echelon of the conference as far as the GAC is concerned for a while this year. Certainly no fluke for you guys, although it's obviously further than you've gotten before. It's not like you just, turned it up this year. You guys have been performing at a very high clip. Not like you switched that up. You've also, Coach Simmons has been there since 2017, I believe. So it's not like he just comes in and just energizes, the team out of nowhere. What was it about this year? Obviously, it was not easy to get to that point, but you look at the end result this year compared to years past. What are the couple things that really stand out to you about the squad that made it happen?
Yeah, I think the year we went 9-2 last year opposed to this year, like we would play teams and we'd beat them, but like we wouldn't blow them out. And the
Hmm.
teams this year, the teams that we were beaten by, 14, like 7, 17, we're beaten by 60, 65. So it's just our ability to put full games together. I mean, shoot, our offense, like just being able to do that for 15 weeks, I credit that a lot to not killing each other in practice.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, if you've watched any of our games, you've seen our defense, they're going to show up every time. Like I mean, best D line in the country, best front seven in the country, and I mean, our DBs are dang good too.
Yeah, for a team, that's the crazy thing is that, I think, again, as an outsider's perspective, people might think, oh, practicing against each other, which again doesn't really, we're not really getting ones-on-ones very often here, right? But practicing against each other, like these guys might not have a lot of reps at like rushing the passer. You guys do that really well. You guys get back to the quarterback incredibly well. Your defensive backs have a lot of really good instinct, and the passing attack is not somewhere that you like just fall apart and falter, which is kind of a really cool point. But to kind of close it off here as far as, your squad, I'm looking forward maybe to next year a little bit. We've seen some national powers. We've talked about some Super Region 3 teams like Ferris and Pittsburgh State that are kicking things off in week 0, which is really exciting. Teams like Northwest, Minnesota State, Bemidji Tech. Any word on schedule for you guys, 2024 coming around the corner here? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything. I've been seeing that, and I've been intrigued to see if we're doing anything, but I'm not sure. We haven't been around our coaching staff at all, really. We start spring ball tomorrow, which is early. So
fair enough.
I mean,
fair enough.
I'm sure we'll know in the next month or two.
Yeah. Nobody's standing behind the camera like. No.
I don't know anything. I tell you.
Yeah, I know. Now I know, like right now in this period, you've got, I believe it's like 2 hours of like skill position work per week. Are you guys working with anything like that or no?
All we've done so far is just like our training, our
for sure
like conditioning and workouts, and then we go out. We're going out tomorrow for the first time in helmets and running through I think a brief practice type thing.
Awesome. Yeah. Get the band back together, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that. And you were saying before we got recording, like after the championship game, like just craziness, right? Like everyone disperses because the time of year, like everyone's been together for so long and just trying to get home, and people are all over the place. I didn't even get a team photo after the game.
Yeah, no. So I think the national championship game was December 16th, and I think everybody on the team was done with their finals by the 13th.
Yeah.
So we were in McKinney, done with our finals. We play the game, and then like probably half the team stays in Dallas for the night, does whatever. Half the team goes home. Half the team goes back to Searcy. I mean, like it was no team picture didn't work. We didn't see our coaches weren't all back together until January, which was insane.
That is ridiculous.
It's crazy, man. Just going home for break didn't even sink in.
Yeah, Jesus. But I'm sure you wouldn't have it any other way, huh?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
No, hell no, dude. Sweet. All right, Cole. Hey, that's all I got for you, dude. I appreciate you putting up with my antics, trying to bait you a little bit, but glad I could get you on here and talk a little bit of ball. I'm excited to watch more of your guys' games. I wish I would have started watching earlier this year. You guys put me on about halfway through, and I started to really tune in and see what you guys were all about. Safe to assume that I will know from the first snap this year, and I'll be locked in. How about that?
Sounds good.
It's not going to take till week 5 for me to tune into the bison over there, dude.